I've lived near Wolverhampton for nearly my entire life. Personally, I'm 110% gay. There's no realising about it. I've been gay forever and I've known that since I was in primary school.
I don't think you realise you're gay, you just realise you're not the same as like some of your friends. Although most of my friends wanted to be like me. Fabulous.
I didn't come out until I was about 25. I think I was a kind of major victim of the passing phase theory. When I finally reached the age of 25, I thought, whoops, some passing phase this. I want to sort myself out. It was a long time ago, you know. We're talking about, this was like, I mean, I was born in 1949, so I'm talking like the early 1970s. So I grew up while things were still completely illegal, of course, so.
Well, LGBT, of course. I am bisexual and I'm also transgender, so I fit into the BT bit. Around the time of puberty, 10, 11 onwards, I started buying particularly female underwear and wearing it and so on. I would dress either in my sister's or my mother's clothes when they were out and so on. And unfortunately, I got caught by my mother. Big shock, horror. I had to sort of hide it and put it away and pretend that I was normal.
Well, my son knows I'm gay. My son had a civil partnership himself on the 2nd of June this year. I mean, he was married, he got divorced, he's got 2 grown-up sons. One now is 23 and the other is 19. And they get on famously with his partner, no problem at all.
So, did your son came out to you?
No. We bumped into one another at the same cruising area.
I mean, the vast majority of people are fine. I think me being me, they kind of meet me and they go, oh, you're gay, aren't you? And I'm like, yes!
I put myself as a lesbian, but it took me a long time to finally admit that to myself. In my sort of 20s, I was convinced that all I needed to do was find a husband and have children and life would be wonderful. While at the same time realising that I didn't actually like men very much, but and then I suppose over time I realised that I had 25 years with nobody at all because I wasn't sure what was what. I knew I didn't want men, but I wasn't sort of accepting myself that I did want women. So I only came out when I was 48.
Well, I had a relationship in my early 20s with a woman that lasted for 14 months, and even then at that point I didn't think I was, and she definitely was a lesbian, and we were together, as I say, for 14 months, and I just thought, how can people live like this? You can't tell anyone, you can't go anywhere. And we went out for a drink in our local area, and after I'd sort of said goodnight to her, I got followed by 6 people who beat me up in a car park. And all the verbal abuse that went with that was you dirty lesbian, and lots more swearing that I won't say now. And that sort of just made me realise that it couldn't have been me, it wasn't me, and this wasn't the life I wanted. And then it was only, as I say, 11 years ago when I got with my partner I'm with now that I realised actually I think I am. And so then I had a real identity crisis.
I've always defined myself as a gay male. I've known from a very young age. I finally came out, as they say, about 5 years ago. Didn't have the best of coming outs, put it that way. I've had family disown me, who've not wanted to know me at all. I've lived on the streets because of it. I haven't spoken to my mother in 2.5 years, and I found myself getting depressed quite often. But yeah, I mean, I'm just slowly starting to combat the depression now.
I found it harder to come out because the only view of gay women that I had was from media stereotypes, and because I didn't feel like I fit in with the lesbian stereotype, I thought I was probably not gay, and I was trying to convince myself that it wasn't because it was easier, and obviously I didn't want to get any prejudice or discrimination, and because I felt like people would turn around and go, oh, you can't be gay, you like makeup and you like nice hair and you like clothes and all these things.
I suppose when I actually accepted that I was bisexual would have been November 2009. The first person I told, aside from the few women I spoke to on the internet, was my husband, because I'm married, very happily so. Then I told my mum, and the sort of resounding response I got was, it's taken you a long time to realise. So it was clearly very obvious to other people but myself, because I was refusing to accept it. People see being bisexual, in the most part, as a transition phase from being gay to being straight, or from being straight to being gay in one form or another, not realising that there is a huge population of people that are actually in that bracket. Some people out about it, majority not, and the reason they're not is because they get told that it's just a phase, and it isn't just a phase. I don't see the need to go shouting about it from the rooftops, but at the same time, you shouldn't be pushed to the background because people don't believe it's something that exists.
I struggled quite a lot during my adolescence and early adulthood. I was in the closet for all those years. The expectation was that I was going to get married and have children, which I actually did. The thing that really made me come out was my deterioration in my own health, really. I was becoming extremely depressed. I'd had thoughts of ending my own life, which was particularly terrifying as, I have 2 young children, but it just felt like I'd nowhere else to go, really, at that time. So I knew that, something had to change, and the thing that had to change was that I had to be who I really am.
At that time, we are talking the 1950s, no internet, no computers even. Homosexuality was illegal. It was difficult to find out information about being trans. I didn't even know the words to ask, who to ask, what, if any, things were available, because at the time that I'm talking about, the attitude of doctors was that they would put you right with electric shock therapy rather than any other sort of help to achieve what you desired.
I came out about a year or so before legalisation, when I was 20, so 65, so a couple of years, I suppose. If anybody wanted to know, I wouldn't easily deny it, but most people, even if they suspected, wouldn't necessarily ask you, unless they wanted to be homophobic and wanted to find a reason to attack you. But I was very lucky, in all the years, and never really had much violence against myself personally.
I suppose in the late 60s, when I was a teenager, you didn't know about things. Everything was very secret. I mean, up until 67, it was illegal. And then, even then, it was only legal between 2 consenting adults in private. And the police had a wonderful way of deciding what was in private. If there was somebody else in the house, they could charge you. In a hotel, they could charge you. So it was still, difficult, but more and more underground places were sort of building up. If I could go back to being 16, 17 in today's environment, I think I'd have had a lot more fun.
I was 18 in 1967. I didn't really come out till the early 70s, several years later. But clearly some of these pubs had existed from before 67. So there was, increasingly from after the end of the Second World War, there was a kind of nodding acknowledgement that gay men existed and were meeting one another. The trouble is, you had no safety. So even in the early 70s, I can remember sort of police just arriving in a club and it's all being turned out and sort of, lined up against a wall and even after legalisation. And I said I lost a job because I was done on a cruising offence. That's because that was because of, certain police officers at Partick Police Station in Glasgow decided that they would choose to spend, they thought the way that what they were employed to do was to hang around in Kelvin Grove Park and catch gay men having sex with one another. And, and that was in 1990.
Going out into the community, pretty difficult, because a lot of people are like, in their own homes, you can do what you like, but it's basically coming outdoors. Things like when I was in my flat, say if I've got to go to the shop, I've got to get undressed, go out to the shop, come back and get dressed again. And sometimes that can happen 3 or 4 times a day, and it can be really a nightmare when I could just be able to get up in the morning, just get dressed once, and get dressed again, undressed at night time. So, but going out into the community, it is hard. I don't mind the stares, I don't mind the looks, it's just that the fact I don't want to be physically abused or be attacked. I'll keep my phone in my pocket, I've got 99 written on it. If someone does try on it, I'll just tell them and say, I'll phone the police. You get a lot of stares, particularly from the male kind. Particularly from the female, they just tend to look at you and smile at you, but some of them do just give a stare. I think that's pretty rude. Okay, you see me, smile at me, but don't just sit there staring at me. But I just think if somebody stares at me, I thought, am I that gorgeous? You've got to keep staring at me. So that's how I deal with it. I've started to just think, forget what other people think, just think what you think and just go about it and just walk down the street as if no one else is there, just but you.
I have been physically and verbally abused and attacked just for being different. And of course, it does hurt. Police, bless them, do make attempts to look after, in that sense, people like myself a little more because they are aware of the problems, but they cannot be there with you 24 hours a day. And if you do complain, you're likely to find that your car gets vandalised and other problems happen, and your property gets daubed with paint and all this sort of thing. And it does drive people more and more to become insular and ghettoised, and it is that which I'm determined to see an end to, if possible.
I think it would be easier to be a white lesbian, to be honest, because I don't really talk about my sexuality much with the BME community, because there is still like people that, I have to think how my dad would put it, old school, like think back and think it's not right, and so I don't push myself with my sexuality in front of their face or anything like that. As long as I'm comfortable with myself, that's fine with me. But I wouldn't throw nothing in their face. I'm not exactly that comfortable in that community, so it's okay.
And part of our bond is if we are in public, I will talk Italian to him. And if I will say to him, let's go, or this man is dangerous, or this straight person is staring at us, and we can talk to each other that way. And we can also say I love you by saying ti amo. We have our own personal hand signal, which is this. We use that on the bus. We have built up a system, a non-verbal system, and that protects us in public. you know.
Because there are some nasty people who go on the bus. I mean, there's some really. I mean, Wolverhampton, in my experience, is not a gay friendly place.
But in Wolverhampton, we have took some stick on the bus.
Yeah, you do find when you're on the bus and there's someone who sits next to you and they talk to you, and sometimes I find myself acting like I'm straight because they are a certain way about it, and Wolverhampton isn't exactly the gayest friendly town in the world.
At school it was a nightmare because my name's Sam, so I was always called Sam the Man. I had short back and sides, and obviously I was known as the man. And it was horrible. But, you know, after a bit, at the time,
it depends who you are.
Yeah, you don't care. After a bit, you just get used to it, and then, you know, I'm glad all my friends knew, because all my friends was really supportive, and my family was really supportive when I come out as gay. I've got a gay older brother, so my mum, I think she was used to kids coming out as gay by then, so, you know, it was the norm.
I said I was bisexual, and then it turned more seriously, because I just got to the stage where it was like, what's the point? I can't live my life if I can't be honest with myself, and to be honest with myself, I need to be honest with everybody else. So you do get tormented, and you do get names, and you get tricked. But I think there should be a lot more things going into schools and colleges to help other people that are come out gay or come out as a lesbian, to help them be more, you know, comfortable in their own skin, kind of thing.
If I thought that I wanted to talk to anybody at school about being gay, I would not have dared in a million years. The school was so homophobic, it's unbelievable. Everybody's getting off with everybody in the changing rooms, but the teachers were like, straight up a lip, you don't talk about it, it's not there, it doesn't exist. I know there were at least 2 gay teachers at my school, and even those you couldn't have approached, because there was just this, I think, is it section 28 that says that you can't speak about gay people in school? And I think there was still that kind of attitude that this is something that we can't touch.
I came out first at secondary school, which wasn't too good. Like, they tried to like call me names, bullying, and I moved schools since then. My first secondary school was really bad. I think it was the fact that it was a load of, well, it was quite a Christian type of school, and you know, and it was way before the Equality Act of 2010, so they could still teach about homophobia in the Bible and stuff like that.
I've only came out this year properly. I think what also held back my coming out process was my Christian upbringing. I was brought up in a Christian household, in an Afro-Caribbean, traditional evangelical Christian household where anything gay was evil, and so if you had those feelings, you would have been, well, in trouble, ostracised from the rest of the larger Afro-Caribbean community and the church. So
I was brought up in a religious household. My parents, my immediate family, and pretty much all of my friends' base were Jehovah's Witnesses, which meant that when I came out and decided that I didn't want to be part of that faith anymore, I had to basically leave all those ties behind, and that includes my 2 brothers, my brother's wife and his children as well, which really, really upset me. So I think that's probably the biggest way in which it's affected me. But at the same time as that, like you say, with the friends as well, because everyone that I'd ever known had been a Jehovah's Witness, I sort of found myself, age 19, nowhere to live and no friends to speak of. I didn't know anybody apart from a couple of friends that I'd had at school, so that was quite difficult.
because I was so ashamed of my sexuality, at the time, I went to my church for help. I thought that I was, possessed by the devil, I was a bad Christian. So I sort of went all super zealous. I told my priest at the time about my feelings, and he recommended me going to an organisation. They took a view that it's okay to be gay or lesbian, but it's not God's design, God's plan. So it's in your best interest to be celibate. So I think the technical name for this kind of therapy is called aversion therapy, I think it's called. And that's when I stopped going to the group because it just wasn't working for me. I was very depressed. But that was a turning point. One massive thing was great for me was this is the beginning of me coming out properly. First thing first, I changed churches to a more liberal church here in the city of Wolverhampton, a church called All Saints. I'm openly bi, that's who I am, I'm bisexual, openly bi in this church. And I'm accepted by the priest and the whole congregation. To the point where my priest even encouraged me to go and date with men, like you do. Yes, not every day that happens.
We're a Church of England church, it's important to say. For people from the LGBT community looking for a church, unless they live in London or Manchester, the choices are, to my knowledge, really quite limited. For me, when somebody comes to the church, is less who they are, what they are. The issue is how they live their life, and primarily the first issue is for me as to how I live my life, as to whether I'm welcoming and encouraging of anyone. And then the next thing is, do people stand up to the command to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul and with all your strength, and to use their brains to apply that to the biblical texts. And the texts as a woman priest, I'm in a far more vulnerable position in terms of the amount of scripture that talks about women in leadership being a bad thing than people who are in lesbian and gay relationships. So it would be very hypocritical of me, if nothing else, to say, well, those scriptures that I feel as a woman priest no longer apply, to then take a look at this far smaller number of scriptures and say, but actually I'm thinking of those. The church needs LGBT people in it. I've just always welcomed people on the basis they live their life. That would be where I was at personally.